Hello and welcome to TechEd. My name is Adrian Nash and I'm the Head of Strategy for SAP Customer Experience. So thank you for joining us today. I'm here to talk to you about the era of customer freedom. And specifically in that challenge, I'm going to talk to you today about the customer data platform and how that fits into the overall customer experience strategy. Before we begin, let's think about where customer experience fits into the overall SAP strategy of the intelligent enterprise. Really, customer experience is key part of the intelligent suite, underpinned by the business technology platform. The business technology platform helps organizations with those database and database management capabilities, analytics, whether that's in the application itself or broader analytical purposes, application development and integration, which are key topics, and then more intelligent technologies. So digging into that in a bit more detail, if we think about database and data management as part of the business technology platform, we really think about the storage, the processing, the integration of data across the intelligent enterprise. And then we think about analytics, which might be BI or business intelligence capabilities and data warehousing. Application development integration might include integration strategies, business services, user experience across our cloud applications. And then those intelligent technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and IoT technologies. So customer experience underpinned by the business technology platform is really the future strategy of SAP customer experience. To give you an example of one such technology and innovation that we're making within SAP customer experience, I'm going to be talking today about the customer data platform. Before we get into technology, let's think about why the customer data platform is even a thing. The great thing about customer experience is you and I have a customer experience every day, right? We engage with organizations, whether it's in a business engagement, whether it's as a consumer of products or services, we see and breathe the customer experience that organizations need to deliver every day. The challenge is that organizations now have to cope with more channels, more preferences, more competition, and more ways to engage with customers than ever before. So whether that's in a social channel, buying from Instagram, or whether that's a hybrid experience of where you have a digital account that you're connecting in store. The expectation as customers is that we have a continuity between those channels so that ultimately we have a connected experience with that brand across those different channels. But therein lies the problem. You know, the challenges that we see in the market are really around the fact that we've gone from monolithic CRM applications where the data models are strict and really business process orientated to really having customer focused processes, customers being brought into the heart of every process. And the reality is that what we need to do as organizations and where SAP needs to help our customers is giving the customers to choose and have the freedom to select the channel which best serves them. The problem with those is that the customer experience is often fragmented, small parts of the customer across these cloud applications, which mean ultimately it's a disjointed experiences as you're engaging with customers, whether that's when you're buying to having a product and a service, whether that's when you're evaluating the brand, whether that's when you're coming up to a renewal of a product and service, and that data is siloed. So what is needed is really a way to know the customer in that moment across the channels. And the moment is then influenced by previous moments and then future moments. So it's really an in the moment view of the customer that is relevant for that moment only. And as customers then traverse across different channels, whether that's a social engagement, whether that's in-store, whether that's online, that continuity of that moment is spread across those channels so that we can provide one-to-one hyper-personalized experiences in that moment. And we have to remember that data and customer data is becoming more and more regulated. No longer can brands just collect as much data as they want, store it for however long they want, and use it however they want. data across the globe coming from customers is treated in different ways. We need to understand why we were given that data at the point that it was collected, but then not forget why it was collected in the first place and create unexpected experiences. We need to build trust with customers, because ultimately they're in control. And customers lose trust really easily, right? You only have to do one thing wrong and customers lose trust. And it's really hard to regain that trust. So whatever you do about thinking about customer-centric processes, trust really needs to be at the heart of that process. And then the reality is that over the move from monolithic on-prem CRM systems to more cloud-native solutions with point-to-point integrations, it's very hard for organizations to move at real time. But I would say it's more than that. It's more, how do I move at the pace of the customers? How do I meet the customer expectation about, I've just purchased and I want my order confirmation, or, I've just been in store and I have had a push notification to give me relevant products and services, or I've created a service ticket and now want to provide feedback via Qualtrics, for example. These things have to move at the pace of the customer, and 70% of organizations cannot move in real time in customer experience. So with these challenges, we have to think about how we got to this point. And I mentioned this previously. Really, we're coming from the fact that in the past, we've created CRM systems that are focused on helping the business run their processes. In the end, it did help the customer because there was continuity beyond those different engagements, but it was very process driven and expecting customer go to point A to point B to point C and managing that process. And then as technology evolved and the architecture landscape exploded, there was really a move to cloud solutions, which were customer centric, but they may be different vendors across a heterogeneous kind of environment. So you might know a bit about a customer in this application for this purpose, and then you might have data about the customer in this other cloud solution for this purpose. But often it was hard to connect those things in a way that scales. So now this is the introduction of what we've been seeing over the last few years with the customer data platform. It's a solution that connects together the fragmented data of customers across whether it's SAP or non-SAP solutions into a real-time platform that exposes the customer profile that's relevant for that moment of engagement. That's really what a customer data platform should be. It should be able to power systems of engagement, not just marketing applications, to better know the customer in those moments. And that's really why we as SAP have been investing on bringing the CDP to market, which happened at the end of November. As I mentioned, the CDP is really a technology that exposes data in real time. It ingests data from your various data sources, and different data sources have different qualities. And I'll go through a bit about that in a few moments. But it's not just what you know about the customer, like their first name, their last name, their email address, their preferences, their consent. It's really the activities and events that a customer interacts with you. So it might be a customer walking into a store and showing their loyalty card at the point of sale, connecting that experience to the My Account profile page on their native app, connecting that experience with the service engagement where you want to know what that product is, what that customer has recently purchased, and also using marketing to better upsell and cross-sell to that customer based on their activity and other customers and what they're doing to really provide that one-to-one personalization. So by doing that, you can really hyper-personalize the proposition to that customer across different channels. Because today, the reality is personalization is done in a single channel, and they can be different from channel to channel, right? So you might get a product recommendation in a native app that's running an e-commerce platform, and then a different experience when you're connecting in a marketing email that comes from the marketing platform. So with the CDP, there's a continuity of starting place for hyper-personalization. The CDP needs to have a core of data privacy. Data ingestion needs to be translated to the purpose of why that data is even collected in the first place. Because you need to understand why data is collected so you can better understand how and where and when that data can be used later on. By not collecting the purpose of data up front, you put yourself at risk of either surprising customers with the way that you're using data, or by compliance issues, by sending data to platforms where you don't have the legitimate reason to have that data. So the CDP is really to connect those offline to online engagements, those anonymous stages to known stages across all systems of engagement in real time. We as SAP have been hard at work building the CDP over the last 12 months, and we're about to bring it to market and is available for our customers. But how did we take that approach? Let's have a look at the way that we approach the CDP program, and then we'll dig into the details of how we approach that as SAP. Every CDP, every data solution needs to start with a solid ingestion capability of connecting applications. And our focus has really been to ingest data from not just SAP systems. It can be from a CSV file on an S3 bucket, or in real-time events coming from a commerce platform. It can really come from many different sources, and each source has a different data model, different purpose, and is treated slightly differently. So we need to first connect those silos of customer data, tie it to greater understanding, because we can bring together the fragmented view of the customer, so we get a greater understanding of that customer, and then we can have additional insight on top of that customer data. We absolutely need to have the respect element around the customer data. We need to know how, where, and when we can use that data, and I'll talk a bit about that in a few moments. So that ultimately, in real time, we have that profile of the customer that's ready in your systems of engagements, whether that's a marketing engagement, whether that's a personalized experience, whether that's an in-store engagement, whether that's a customer service engagement, whether that's getting order updates from the back office and blurring the lines there. This is really the engagement part of the customer data platform, so that ultimately we're hyper-personalizing that experience across different channels. So let's dig into a bit more detail on each one of those layers. The first thing is connect. Now, not all data is the same, right? Not all data is the same quality, not all data is the same format, not all data comes at the same speed and velocity. You know, there's different types of data. So as part of the CDP, we had to really deeply understand data, whether that's the first party data that you collect as part of like a registration form or an onboarding process into your brand, which probably is the highest qualified data that you have and should be treated in that way. But then you might have second party data that you get from strategic partners, which is useful and used for marketing, but it isn't necessarily the data that you would reflect back to the customer. Another data like third party data, which you can enrich, but not necessarily know more about that individual. It's really about the enrichment part. And then there's the more transactional data, the unstructured data that's sent into the platform, like orders, adding to baskets, viewing product categories, registering to the loyalty solution, feeding back on a Qualtrics survey, creating a service ticket, all of these different events that happen. And the first thing that we do in the CDP is obviously we support these no-code connectors to make it simple to onboard those different applications, whether they're SAP or not. Or you can use something like the integration services on top of the business technology platform to more modify the data as it's coming into the CDP. But when it's in the CDP, the first thing that we do is a data privacy check, so that we don't lose why we have that data in the first place. Then for each different type of event, we model that into a structure, validate and normalize the data, and then resolve it based on any attribute that you send through. It might be your CRM ID, it might be your customer identity ID, it might be your email address or phone number, or at different points of time, there might be different things. So that ultimately we have this profile that's ready for use in real time for that moment of engagement. Then as we have that data flowing into the platform, we can then in real time segment the building blocks of knowing that customer better. So it might be things like the total order value, or the number of service tickets, or people that have purchased this month, or the birthday of the consumer, so that we can build better audiences. And audiences are a mechanism of activating that data in systems of engagement. So it can either happen in real time as part of a journey activation, or it can happen in groups of audiences that you can activate in a marketing platform, for example, or in technology like a DMP or anything like that, where you can use and leverage an audience. So that ultimately, as the data is streaming in real time, we can detect these signals of segmentation and insight, so that we can better hyper-personalize to that customer. And the really important thing, and the item where we spent a lot of time and investment, is really we wanted this customer profile to be ready in that moment of engagement, whether it's a marketing solution or beyond marketing. So really the moment that we have this customer profile that's influenced by the events and activities that happen before, it's ready in those systems of engagement. Whether that's a system of engagement like a loyalty solution as connected into a point of sale, a service engine, or a marketing or personalization engine. And there's different qualities of the profile that you need, and it's contextual based on that in the moment requirement. And that moment, that profile in the moment, is then influenced the next time that you need that customer profile by that moment of engagement. So it's a continuously evolving, moving, evolving customer profile that's real time and across those systems of engagement. Think about what I said earlier. The first thing that we do is first a data privacy check to make sure that we know why we have that data in the first place. And that's really relevant as you activate the data from the CDP in systems of engagement, because you don't want to just send data across all of the platforms, all of the systems that you have, because then you create unexpected experiences for the customer. Like, I don't remember opting into a marketing email or a push notification on my phone for this brand. I don't remember allowing targeting via third-party websites where I'm starting to see the products and services. That's why the data collection and data purpose is really important step. And then respecting that decision and respecting why you have that data is really core part of how you activate that data in those systems of engagement. The reality is that no one runs one technology vendor in either their front or back office, right? There's a heterogeneous environment out there that are using multiple vendors, whether it's custom built, whether it's SAP, whether it's one of our, even competitive solutions. The reality is that the customer data platform needs to make that data available to any system that your customers engage. And that's really been a key focus for us as SAP. This platform needs to be able to integrate into SAP solutions in great ways, but also to be available via API or via connector to third-party applications, where you can ultimately personalize those journeys, activate those audiences, and really take action on that data. Because unless you take action, you're not really delivering that customer experience. And the reality is, we as SAP and our customers don't box up a customer experience and give it to those customers. Those customers have an emotional reaction to whether the organization knows them, whether they're offering relevant products and services, whether they support the channels that they choose, whether it's the following the guidance of how they want to engage from a preference. It's on their terms. And that's how a customer experience happens. It's the outcome of an emotional reaction based on the building blocks of how an organization can interface and interact with that customer. So ultimately, the SAP customer data platform really provides that foundation of insight across systems of engagement. It builds customer profiles the right way to make sure that we're not taking action that we're not allowed on that customer data, or will cause that customer real frustration in that I didn't give that organization permission to do that thing. It's a platform so that you can have continuity of hyper-personalization across those brands, really connecting in SAP and non-SAP applications. So to summarize that as a full capability map of the CDP, it's really about data collection and applications that can actually use the CDP, can use the living, breathing profile, also then push into the CDP based on the outcome, right? So data producers also become consumers and vice versa. And then as we ingest the data, we really think about the purpose, the consent, modeling the data. It's got a flexible, customer-driven data model for each event, enriching the data as it's coming in. If you've got services that use internally to enrich the data to build that customer profile. And then the insight layer comes into play when you think about those real-time calculated attributes. It might be total order value or NPS changes or anything that you can gather on top of that data to build the activation elements for segmentation and audience management. And then using low code connectors, you need to be able to connect the ecosystem, whether that's SAP solutions, whether that's non-SAP solutions, whether that's into the integration layer of the business technology platform so that you can modify the data in transit. These are all options that we'll support with the customer data platform. And to give you a kind of a view into the technology that we've built, the CDP is a true multi-tenant SaaS solution. It's designed to scale to many tens or hundreds of millions of profiles per tenant. You know, we've been talking to customers that have 250 million known identities and 4 billion cookies, for example, as part of their ecosystem, which just might have a page view, but not all of that data is the same quality. So the platform needs to scale, it needs to be real time, it needs to be able to manage demands that we see across our customer base. And this is really how we built the platform. It's purpose built to take an API first approach to things like the ingestion services, the query services, the configuration and extensibility out of the box. So using something like Kyma for side-by-side extensibility as part of the data flowing into the platform, for example. Using application connectors as part of a studio where you can build your own low-code connectors and then publish them into a marketplace where you can then activate that connector or extend that integration using the business technology platform integration capabilities. And as data is streaming into the platform in real time, you can have those processing services, of which we will provide many, but they can be extended in the end. Ultimately, you know, built in with things like how you operate the system, how you secure the data, all of these kind of table stake items that we've built as part of the platform. And that's been a little bit about the SAP Customer Data Platform that was available at the end of November. And we're looking forward to engaging with our customers as they use the CDP into 2021 and beyond. We've already got lots planned for the CDP, so watch this space. There's also lots of other sessions around customer experience at TechEd, and we'd encourage you to join those sessions, like the privacy and compliance elements of the Unified Customer Profile, which I've talked about a little bit today, but you can learn some more about that. And also really interesting is the commerce trends around the global pandemic, right? You know, we all changed behavior, especially in the UK for me in March. It changed overnight, and it's really interesting to see some of those trends that we're seeing across our portfolio. You know, TechEd really, to me and to many of you, is a learning experience, and I would encourage you to continue that process, to continuously learn both about the industry and about SAP, and you know, activate your capabilities and your access to the Learning Hub, and continue that learning process. Thank you for joining me today. As I mentioned, my name's Adrian Nash. I'm the head of strategy for SAP Customer Experience, and I'm really looking forward to working with you on great solutions that we bring to market, like the Customer Data Platform. Thanks, and have a great rest of the event.
you